Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. This is a follow-up to my video about Tariq Nasheed's Don't Vote campaign. In that video, I basically said that campaign is stupid and irresponsible. And I stand by that statement. I don't take back anything that I said in that video because what I said was the truth. I speak truth to power without fear. Whether it's speaking truth to the power, elite, the establishment, or even to my own people. Sometimes we have to agree to disagree. So I stand by those statements. And I noticed that there was a lot of comments to that video. There was a lot of feedback, a lot of debate. And instead of just merely responding in the comment section, I want to do this video right now to make my position absolutely clear, to explain where I stand on this issue in more detail. So let's start with one of the main arguments that were raised in the comment section, and that's this argument. People said our votes don't matter. Basically, that was their point. And some even said the president is selected and not elected. That's a popular catchphrase here on YouTube and even in the larger society. People say this. And I challenge someone in the comment section to provide proof that the president is not actually elected. Provide proof that the president is selected. I challenged them and they couldn't provide that proof. And I challenge you right now, everyone that's watching, prove that the president is not elected. Prove that the president is selected. See, often people throw out these catchy phrases without having any kind of proof whatsoever behind them. These are just buzzwords, popular sayings with nothing backing them up. Some people want to say because there's an electoral college, that means that the president is selected and not elected. Well, the fact of the matter is, the electors are elected by the people. The electors are pledged to vote for certain candidates, and the electors vote in accordance with the popular vote in each of the states. That's a fact. There are laws in over 20 states that penalize electors for backing out on their pledges, penalizes them for voting in a way that's contrary to the pledge that they made. So 99% of the time, the electors vote in accordance with their pledge. They vote in accordance with the popular vote in their state. There have been a few rare occasions where electors did not vote in accordance with their pledge, where they abstained and possibly voted contrary to their pledge. But in each one of those examples, the very few electors that have voted contrary to their pledge, they did not have any impact whatsoever on the outcome of the election for president. So again, my point is simple. The electors vote in accordance with the popular vote in each state. So our vote matters. So let's quit pretending like there's some kind of conspiracy. I mean, we learn about the Electoral College in middle school. So this is not some great information. It's not some secret information that no one knows about. We live in a representative democracy. We indirectly elect the president. So that's my first point on that issue. Now, someone said, well, African Americans are a minority in this country, so we don't have much sway in terms of the outcomes of these elections. Anyone who studies politics knows that that simply is not factually accurate. If you look at the high numbers of African Americans in the South, you know that the African American vote is determinative in the South in terms of the primaries. We know that no Democratic presidential candidate can be elected without having support from the African American community. That's just a fact. So our vote has value. And I encourage people to check out Malcolm X's famous speech, The Ballot or the Bullet. He talks about the impact of the African American vote. If we harness our vote, if we exercise our vote in a calculated and strategic way, we have the ability to affect the outcomes in these elections. President Obama would not be in the White House today if the black vote didn't stand behind him, if black people didn't vote for him over 90 something percent. He wouldn't be in the White House. It's just plain and simple. So we have to get rid of this notion that our vote doesn't matter. There's a reason why these politicians are now pandering to African Americans ahead of the elections in South Carolina. They want the African American vote because they can't win a primary without it. They simply can't. Now, some people want to pretend like there has been no progress. I heard someone say in the comment section something about the status quo. Voting merely maintains the status quo. And, other people have said we've been voting and there has been no change. These people are simply ignoring reality. If you were to compare our situation to the days of slavery, you would know that there was obviously some progress in our community. If you were to compare the days of Jim Crow to our condition right now, you would have to acknowledge that there has been some progress. Only someone who has put on blinders can't see the progress. If you look at all the black elected officials in this country, if you look at all the black millionaires and billionaires in this country, if you look at all the expansion of the middle class, the black middle class in this country, you have to acknowledge that there has been significant progress in this country. But people want to ignore that and pretend like nothing has changed. And things have changed because of our right to vote. When we didn't have the right to vote, we could not change the laws. We were subjected to somebody else's laws. We were subjected to laws that had us in the back of the bus. We were subjected to laws that had us drinking in separate fountains. We were subjected to laws where they had signs saying no colored people and no dogs. You can't tell me that there has been no progress. We went from the outhouse to the White House. So don't tell me that there's been no progress. There have been progress on every level of government, in every aspect of life. That doesn't mean that everything is solved, obviously. We still have great issues to overcome in this country. But let's not pretend like there has been no progress. Let's not pretend that elections have not had an impact. If you look at our history, we get our civil rights through laws being passed. Who passes laws? Elected officials. Who passed the Civil Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act, the Voting Rights Act? Politicians who were elected by the people. When black people gained the right to vote, we gained power in the South. That's without question. When we gained the power to vote, Jim Crow came to an end. So don't tell me that our vote doesn't matter, that our vote doesn't count. When our brothers and sisters, our ancestors, and our elders fought for the right to the vote, they knew what they were fighting for. They knew what they were dying for. They knew the importance of the vote. When they faced those dogs and those batons in Selma, they knew the importance of voting. When Medgar Evers was killed in front of his house, he knew how important the vote was. He was willing to give his very life for it. Because all other freedoms flow from your right to vote. If you can't vote, you don't have any impact on what kind of laws are passed. So that's one thing that I want to talk about. They say that the presidential election doesn't matter. Nothing can be more false than that. The president has great power. The president decides who's going to be on the Supreme Court. We look at the court right now and we can understand the importance of the vote. Right now, the court is evenly split following the death of Justice Scalia. You have 4 conservatives and you have 4 liberals on the court right now. The appointment of the judge to replace Scalia will have great impact. It will tilt the court either to the right or to the left. So why do you think these Republicans are doing everything that they can to prevent Obama from appointing a new justice? Because they don't want the court to become more progressive. They want it to remain the way it was under Scalia, a right-leaning court. Why is the Supreme Court important? Because it defines our constitutional rights. It interprets the laws that can either advance our rights or restrict our rights. That court determines all kinds of rights in terms of our right to privacy, in terms of our right to be free from discrimination, in terms of our right to affirmative action and education, in terms of our voting rights. The Supreme Court struck down a key provision of the Voting Rights Act. The right wing had been pushing to get rid of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, and they do it for a reason, because they understand the power of the vote. It's like we are the ones that don't understand. Our vote is very important. The president not only appoints judges to the Supreme Court, but the president appoints judges to the lower federal courts as well, the Court of Appeals, the district courts. The president decides who's going to lead the Department of Justice. He determines whether or not the Justice Department will prioritize civil rights, will enforce civil rights. That's very important. The president decides who will lead other government agencies, whether we're talking about housing agencies, education agencies, other important agencies that have a direct impact on our lives. So don't tell me that elections don't count. And then on the local level, elections determine what kind of prosecutors you're going to have. You can't complain about Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown and Tamir Rice if you don't engage in voting, if you are not participating in the electoral process. Voters decided who would be the prosecutor in those cases. Voters decided who would be the district attorney in those jurisdictions. So our vote matters. Don't complain about the verdicts in these cases if you don't vote on the local level. If you don't vote for your DA. If you're not voting for your mayor. Your mayor is the one who appoints the chief of police. If you're not electing these people, if you're not voting for these people, you can't even complain about the process. Because all these policies are determined by politicians that the people elect. The president has the power to set the legislative agenda for this country. It is simply foolish to relinquish that power and just turn it over to the far right. I'll talk about that a little bit later. If we look at the situation in Flint, as someone pointed out in another video, if we look at that situation, the people elected the governor of Michigan. the same governor that decided to take over the Flint government, the same governor who appointed an executive administrator who made the decision to switch the water source for Flint, who made a disastrous decision. And now, because of the decision of those politicians, children are being poisoned today. People are being deprived of basic human rights in Flint. They are being subjected to environmental racism. They're living like they're in a third world country, and this is supposed to be America, the land of the free. That's kind of stuff happens when the people don't participate in these elections. When these people sit at home instead of voting for somebody other than the current governor of Michigan, they are just as responsible as that damn governor for the poisoning of the people of Flint. That's what happens when you sit back and you let other people make decisions for you. Now, a lot of people have used Obama as some kind of excuse as to why we should not vote. That's what they have done. They said, well, the brother was a disappointment. He's a disappointment. He's done nothing for black people, so why vote? First of all, the notion that Obama has done nothing for black people is just wrong. It's just flat out wrong. It's an outright lie. It's an outright lie. If you look at what he's done in terms of fighting in court to protect affirmative action, you got to admit that the president has done something for black people. When you look at the fact that the president fought to protect our voting rights in the case of Shelby County versus Holder, you have to acknowledge that the president has done something for black people. When you look at the Brothers Keeper program, you have to acknowledge that the president has done something for black people. When you look at the Fair Sentencing Act that substantially reduced the disparity between sentencing for crack cocaine and powder cocaine, you have to acknowledge that the president has done something for black people. When you look at the executive order that he passed on education for African Americans, you have to acknowledge that the president has done something for black people. When you look at the fact that his Justice Department has sued Ferguson Police Department for their discriminatory practices, you have to acknowledge that the president has done something for black people. When he investigated the killing of Michael Brown, when he investigated the killing of Trayvon Martin, when you look at the settlement agreement that has been reached with the Cleveland Police Department, you have to acknowledge that the president has done something for black people. We need to quit ignoring reality, quit exaggerating. Has he done enough? Of course not. But don't say that the brother has done nothing for black people, because that's an outright lie. That's what it is. See, a lot of times people expect magic from politicians. They thought that Obama was going to float down from the heavens on a cloud and part the Red Sea and walk on water and heal the sick and revive the dead. That's what they expected, because they don't understand politics. It is completely unrealistic to expect one man, a single man, to reverse 400 years of racism, of Jim Crow, of white supremacy within 8 years. That's irrational. That's illogical. And that's what a lot of people have expected. And because Obama didn't live up to those exaggerated and out of proportion and ridiculous expectations, now all of a sudden people want to throw in the towel and say that the electoral process is useless. That's nonsense. These people ignore the fact that we have three branches of government, that we have Congress, the legislative branch, and we have the judiciary. They ignore the fact that you had Republican obstruction in the Congress. They ignore that. They think that the president is some kind of king and he could wave a magic wand and make everything okay. And because he didn't do so, all of a sudden these people want to question the whole voting process. That's illogical to me. That's stupid to me. You know, people have all these slogans again. You know, slogans like illusion of inclusion. Well, if people understand politics, they weren't under any illusions. They didn't expect Obama to all of a sudden cure America of racism. I heard someone say that there have been more killings under Obama than other presidents. That's not true. Cite any kind of report to prove that. Police brutality hasn't increased under Obama. The only difference between today and yesterday in terms of police brutality is the availability of technology to capture a lot of the brutality that our people face. So let's get real. Another argument that people raise is this. And, you know, many of these people are just parroting what they heard Tariq Nasheed say. He says that none of these candidates plan to do anything specific for black people. And I just want to say a few things about that. Anyone who's looked at the websites for the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Bernie Sanders campaign knows for a fact that both of those candidates have presented specific plans or policies directed towards black people in criminal justice, in education, in voting rights, in economics, and all kinds of other areas. So it's important for us to educate ourselves. Don't just listen to somebody here on YouTube tell you something without going to check it out for yourself. You have to follow these politicians. You have to study these politicians. You have to analyze these politicians, analyze their statements, analyze their policies, analyze their past decisions, and then make your own informed decision and assessment. Don't just take somebody's word for it because it's not factual. These politicians have specific plans for African Americans. And it's up to us to decide who has the best plan. And it's up to us to impose our will on these politicians, to demand that they adhere to our agenda, to advance our agenda. You don't advance an agenda by sitting on the sidelines, by sitting out an election. When people don't vote, they don't count. A group that doesn't vote is not a group that politicians go to for support. Those people who don't vote are written off. They don't count. That's just the way politics works. By sitting out an election, we only empower the most reactionary elements of society. The hate mongers, the white supremacists. That's all we do is empower them. We make it possible for them to get into the White House. We make it possible for them to pass laws that benefit them and not us. We can't afford to sit out this election. There is too much at stake. And when I hear people talking about this campaign not to vote, part of me wonders who is paying these people to suppress the black vote. Here in Baltimore, during an election a couple of years ago, a political operative did robocalls to voters. He basically said, well, there's no need to vote. Your candidate has already won. You don't have to bother going to the polls. And what that did is that decreased voter turnout. That was the goal, to decrease voter turnout so the other candidate could win. And this Don't Vote campaign is doing nothing but decreasing voter turnout. These people are playing into the hands of the most reactionary forces in this society. They're playing into the hands of the people who wrote the voter ID laws. They're playing into the hands of the people who tried to purge black and Latino voters. They're playing into the hands of those people who struck down Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act. It just makes me wonder, have these people been paid to promote this nonsense? It makes me wonder. Now, I've heard a few ideas on here. You know, the first time I even came across this whole campaign was on Facebook. I saw an article written by Tariq Nasheed talking about this campaign not to vote. And after I saw that article, I decided to write my own article in response. And I'll post a card in this video again as well so that you can check out that article. But in his article, in Tariq Nasheed's article, he talks about how voting basically is a way to prevent people from rebelling, from storming the castle. And I understand what he's saying, but I reject, the whole point of saying that. I reject the notion that you should not vote because voting somehow is maintaining the status quo. I reject that outright. I mean, what do these people expect us to do? To sit back while others make laws that benefit them? To sit back while others elect politicians to advance their agenda? While we sit and wait around for this imaginary, fantastical revolution to take place, this rebellion, sitting around waiting years upon years while other people advance and we're waiting for some mythological revolution to happen. There is no revolution coming anytime soon. There is no revolution coming. And you can't even mobilize these people for reforms, and you expect to mobilize people for revolution. You're not realistic. I can't take people seriously to talk like that.